Hey everybody, on the show today I have Kathleen Mercury from Gen Con to talk about Game Design Academy 2.0. It's their second year. They have even more offerings for you to avail yourself of. And I can't wait for her to be able to explain all those great things to you. Let's get to it. That interview starts now. Hi Kathleen, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
For those of you who may not know who you are with Gen Con, and you are dealing with their Game Design Academy this year, which was, from what I understood from the participants, a huge success. Why don't you tell us more about Game Design Academy and what Gen Con is trying to do?
Yeah, so I'm very lucky and privileged to be one of the two co-coordinators of Gen Con's Game Design Academy, along with Dr. Andrew Peterson of Ferris State University. And together, we put together a program for people who want to be game designers or even people who are on the journey towards becoming a game designer in the industry by providing access to industry professionals through workshops and seminars and plenty of opportunities for discussion and collaboration. And it was really, really successful last year. And we're really excited that for this year that we can take that success and keep building on it. Because especially for me, wanting to help people support them in their, burgeoning careers, or even if they just want to make a single game,
Hmm?
you know, the more we can do to give people access to just the absolute best resources to do so is really exciting. And Gen Con has been so incredibly supportive in us creating this program within their space.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a big part of Gen Con that people don't realize because it happens on Wednesday and it's called
Hmm.
Trade Day. But Trade Day is very much about education in not only game design now, but implementing games in educational situations. And I find that fascinating.
Yeah, I've been a long time, and that's part of how I got, involved with, how I was asked to become part of Game Design Academy because of my history of working with Trade Day, as a presenter, keynote a few years ago. Trade Day supports educators, librarians, and retailers, which is kind of a funny mix, but education and how do we communicate, something of value to other people is sort of the uniting concept there. And I think with Trade Day, for me, it was so fundamental and helpful towards me becoming a game designer itself because I started teaching kids to design games, just like knowing nothing. Had just gotten started as a hobbyist, but I taught, gifted kids, and so I could do pretty much whatever I want. Like, let's make games. That sounds cool, right?
Hmm.
And so Trade Day was really for me this is going back 20 years, one of the very few places I could meet with other educators who also were interested in using games in the classroom. So it's really exciting to see how much the gaming space has grown within schools, within libraries, and even partnerships with retailers so that they understand the needs of schools and publishers, as far as, how they can support games and, in these educational spaces and what's possible and all that. So Trade Day has really grown as a program within Gen Con. And so when we decided to put when Game Design Academy was conceptualized and that was put on the Wednesday, there's a lot of, shared focus in terms of education. But one thing that's really great is so many of the folks in the industry who are going to be busy working in their booths and events Thursday through Saturday. Wednesday's actually a really great day to get people to come and present because
Hmm.
they don't mind stepping away from booth setup for a little bit if they've got other folks there to help. So, but we also,
Especially when it's 90 degrees in the hall.
yeah, especially then, yes. But we also have sessions and workshops going on all through the rest of Gen Con. So using Trade Day definitely helped, get the spark of this going. And it's just exciting to see this additional experience. So if someone wants to learn more about how they can use games or share what they're doing about games in their schools and their libraries, etc., Trade Day is a great way. And so it's lovely that Gen Con Game Design Academy now is like sort of like that next level of education for people who are interested in actually becoming a designer. So it's neat to see how that evolution has evolved.
Right. So now trade day is one of the days you can go in and get some very specific uh panels and things like that about game design.
Mhm.
But that theme carries on throughout the rest of the week that Gen Con is there, correct?
Yes, yes. So Game Design Academy goes on the whole week. We'll have spaces on Wednesday, we'll have four different sessions going on at a time. And then throughout the rest of the week, we'll have one of the ballrooms in the bottom of the JW for not just additional workshops and play testing sessions and lots of hands-on and experiences and talks, but also space for designers to work together, to collaborate, and to create a community of designers amongst themselves to provide support, collaboration, someone shoulder to cry on,
Sure, yeah,
whatever
right,
the case.
exactly.
Yeah, and it's cool too because other organizations like the Tabletop Game Designers Association want to have a creator meetup, so we're able to also put that into our space. That'll be Saturday night. And so, again, a chance for people who want to become game designers in our space to help them meet and network with other members of the game design industry, which I think is phenomenal. And we've been talking with Unpub and potentially Gamma even to see if there's any other ways that we can bring those organizations in this year, if not next. Again, just to create more of a community altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a burgeoning field for Gen Con to really kind of focus on. One of the things that I've always loved is the first exposure playtest hall,
Hmm.
which is for those who aren't familiar, where folks can go in and demo their games or playtest their games with folks that are standing there eagerly waiting to play.
Right.
And it's a great way to get your game out there, and it's a structured way for you to go ahead and play test your games, get some feedback before you're going to do any type of release for tweaking. And they're in various levels of creation. Some of them are still on cocktail napkins or index cards, and some of them are all the way to the point where they're about ready for production.
Right, right. And that's one thing that's why we love why it's so amazing to have Game Design Academy at Gen Con, because that's the other part of this. It's not just sessions and workshops. The other great part about having this at Gen Con is also the classroom. There are so many types of opportunities that the people who want to be game designers should do, can do, but especially with the program is definitely encouraging. So, for example, for the first exposure playtest hall, one of the assignments for our students is to go in and play test. They should do that, right? But making it part of the program is a way to emphasize the importance of this. And also, it helps support and elevate. The first exposure playtest hall is something that is, an important venue for people who want to design games, but also the playtest games.
Hmm.
Playtesting other people's games taught me so much as a
Hmm.
designer. And I think also too, just as a gamer, you get so much more appreciation when you see how the sausage is made, right? And it's
Correct.
and it's it's messy and it's hard and it's frustrating, but it's so much fun. And I think sometimes people who are wanting to get started as game designers are really afraid to put their ideas out there.
Hmm.
And the best way to do it is just to do it. And the folks at First Exposure, Avi and Vinny, are just incredible in terms of providing that space and that support for designers. So yeah, that's why having Gen Con as the classroom, there's so many opportunities for people who are interested in RPG design. There's so many, you can play different games, you can do True Dungeon. There's so many types of experiences that are so important towards becoming a designer that you have easy access, well, I mean, Gen Con access to, but you've got access to while you're there. And I think there's just no better place to have literally everything there, everyone there. And yeah, it's great to see like people's excitement because it just feels really real and authentic because it is.
Oh, absolutely. You're steeped in it. It's
Yeah.
almost like being a language learner, being steeped in the language you're trying to learn. I mean, it's a great way to network. I've met a lot of people through Gen Con. I've made friends. It's one of those things where if you want to feel like you're home, that's the place to go. You know,
Yes.
so but you also have more connections with Gamma as well. So you've done some stuff with them as far as getting their creative learning tracks together. And why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. So for Gamma, for the past 3 years, I've helped their creator division put together their content for Gamma Expo, which is the big business to business show that was just held a few weeks ago in Louisville, Kentucky.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because having those two sort of experiences with these two, industry, significant entities, they definitely have fed upon each other. One thing that we started doing when we did for what was first called Design Day at Gamma was we only had a few months to put a program together. So we decided to curate it by saying, okay, what is the content that we want to have? Who are the people that we can talk to about this? And so we were able to just bring in so many top industry professionals who aren't the people that would necessarily, fill out a submission to talk.
Mhm.
But if you ask them, they're like, absolutely, I would love to do this. And so that really worked out well to create super high level content. So we've still done that, but we also brought that approach over to Game Design Academy. And so when looking at, when we're putting together the slate of speakers is, not just what do we hope we get, but what are the types of things that we think are really important for designers that offer a whole slate of different types of experiences that are really beneficial. Everything from just straight up, let's make a game workshops to really focused content, things like IP in games. James Erdis, who's done he's done a bunch of talks for both in terms of luck, but not just
Mm.
luck in games, but also the aesthetics of it, about how luck changes the way people respond to games. We've got everything. I'm just looking over my list right now. What games actually cost? Like, how do you price components? How
Sure.
can you design to price? That's incredibly relevant. Looking at user experience, user interface, best practices, controversial topics in game design. How do you pitch? How do you prepare for a pitch?
Sure. What's a
Iterative
sell
game.
sheet? You
Yeah,
know? Yeah.
accessibility in games, using, toys and unusual materials. How do you develop a game? There's so many real world topics that we're putting together that folks will have access to that I think one, should be able to meet a wide variety of needs, but also to be sort of specialized. If you're not interested in solo game design, then or one player game design, then you don't need to go to those sessions. But there's plenty of other stuff. Even
Sure.
legal 101 for designers. What do you need to know about, IP and trademarks and copyrights and all of that, so we're
Yeah.
trying to really cover the spread and, getting into RPGs. So it's really cool to basically like have, it's like a candy store, what
Yeah.
are all the things I would love to hear about? Because I go to these sessions too, I'm there in the back as much as anybody else, or in the front, leading some of these sessions. So, I'm really excited about that for, so that's one of the things that Gamma has, in having, all of those industry contacts and that curation approach definitely has benefited the way that we're approaching Game Design Academy to make, I mean, well, the first rule of design is what do your users need, right? And what
Sure.
do our new designers or people who want to get, or who are designers but want to get more involved in the industry, what do we need? And it's
Right.
really exciting to make all those, types of events happen.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, as you go through that list of topics, those are things that some of those I wouldn't even thought of. One of them last year, because I was invited by Gen Con to go to Trade Day to kind of look
Hmm.
around and talk to people. One of the ones that I thought was interesting that is so very relevant is marketing yourself on social media.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of my job too, is I'm helping people market themselves on social media. But that piece, it's such a or grassroots movement for some of these
Hmm.
smaller indie game designers that
Right.
getting on all the podcasts and making sure you're publicizing yourself and you're doing it in the right way is really really important to being able to sell games.
Right. And it's funny because out of all the panels at Gamma, that's the only one I did this year. And it's funny because I helped obviously put together the panels, but when we talked about you as your brand and,
Yeah.
who should we put on there? And it was one of the board members, the Creator Vision, who said, "Well, Kathleen, you should be on it." I said, "But I'm actually not really that engaged in social media." He's like,
Mm.
"Right, but I think that's an important part of it too because your approach is very different. Mine is a lot more about networking and talking with people and because I'm not as comfortable putting, I've always been a teacher. I was a middle school
Mm.
teacher for 20 years. And there's certain, I keep all my social media unlocked so that my students could, see a healthy, normal way to be on social media. But it also means I don't necessarily put that much out there that's
Sure.
person that. you know, but it also means I don't put that much out there that's, really personal. And
Sure.
so for me, yes, absolutely. Because on that panel, to my left was my good friend Danielle Reynolds, who is so phenomenal at using social media to create content that people really respond to, from everything from our personal life to so much helpful information about games and game design and publishing. We also have Grant Lyon, who is a comedian who does so much with who's starting to get into who's designed a game and also does a lot of game
Hmm.
reviews and recommendations.
Yep.
So it's a really interesting mix on that panel because you're right. You have to, no matter how you do it, you have to know how to put yourself out there.
Right.
And I was sort of on that panel as sort of like, it doesn't always have to just, I mean, for if you're trying to publish a game, yes, it does. Because I was talking about like me and my services personally, less about games, but you're right. So having that understanding of yourself, your game as your brand and getting it out there, that is an important skill that's out there. There are definitely companies that you can contract with that can help
Mm.
you. There's networks, but you're right, knowing how to do it. And going back to what you're saying about Jamie Stegmaier, he's got some really great resources
Mm.
on how to help people to get their games out there, to see what they're doing. I would definitely say it's a skill, and
Mm.
there's a lot of knowledge out there that if you're just getting started, using all of these resources that people are willing to share. And that's the other thing that
Mm.
I found is how much people are absolutely willing to help for little to no compensation. I
Mm.
don't need that. I'm just happy to do this. And so this industry is full of people like yourself who are wanting to help others, wanting to help elevate other people's ideas, other people's products. And so use those resources to help you figure
Absolutely.
out what will work for you and what you're trying to do.
Absolutely. I mean, there's something in my mind that I've always said, which is like social media by proxy. And
Hmm.
so what that is getting games into other people's social media channels so they can promote your stuff. And therefore, if you're not comfortable being on camera, at least your stuff is being promoted.
Hmm.
So it's a wonderful thing. I love the game community. I think there are so many great people out there designing, so many really good independent designers who are a lot of those I focus on. I've
Hmm.
interviewed Jamie Stegmaier and some of the larger publishers, but these indie publishers are just creating amazing games. And
Yeah.
so it's always nice to be able to highlight some of those throughout my travels over the internet. So
Hmm.
so on for Trade Day
Hmm.
and for Game Design Academy, when do those events go up to be registered? When can
It's
you start
already
registering?
it's already started. And
Okay.
yeah, last year we didn't know because it was the
No.
first time. And I think there were actually only like two emails that went out about it, but we
Hmm.
ended up having, I think, something like 173 people register for the program.
Very good.
Very good. Amazing. Amazing. And one thing I have to say, and this was very cool to see, is when we did a survey afterwards, something like 53 people took the survey. And on the survey, when it came to like how likely are you to recommend Game Design Academy to someone in the future, all of the answers were likely or very likely, which is really, really unusual for
Yeah.
any type of data. And obviously, maybe those other 100. Like, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. No, we had just a really phenomenal positive response to the program. We have gone through all of the data, all of the responses, all of the feedback really carefully to help us inform what we're doing this year. And yeah, registration is already open, and so folks should
Okay.
absolutely jump on this, especially if it's something that sounds like something they could be interested in. The website still has a lot of last year's information on there, but it'll be updated soon with our
Hmm.
new guests of honor and speakers. A lot of the speakers that we had last year are absolutely willing to come back and give additional talks, but we're also looking at how can we, because last year we really focused a lot on more on the beginning stages of the game design
Sure.
process, but this year we're definitely focusing on how do you finish and present and communicate your game through pitches or crowdfunding sources. This year, we're definitely focusing also on that second phase or that final phase of game design where you're
Hmm.
talking about development, you're talking about communicating your game, finding an audience for your game, whether it's crowdfunding or publishing. And then also, too, like I said, expanding opportunities for people to meet and engage more with members of the design community. So it's
Hmm.
really exciting the possibilities that we have going on.
I love it. I can't wait.
Mhm.
We're going to be there this year. Hopefully, I get a chance to meet you while we're there
Yeah.
and see what's going on. I appreciate you coming on and sharing the wealth of knowledge that you have.
Well,
And
thank
I'm
you.
really looking forward to seeing what GDA 2.0 is this year and all the events that you have. If you want to find out more about this, go to gencon.com and look under events for Game Design Academy. You'll be able to find
Mhm.
all of the information there. And as you heard, registration is open now. So if you're interested, start booking.
So often when we think of the game industry, you think of toys, but it's really
Hmm.
people. And one of the best
Hmm.
things about this industry is it's full of people whose number one question is, how do I make this more fun? How do I make this engaging? How can I
Hmm.
have it find the audience or people for whom this would be engaging? And
Hmm.
it's such a fun problem to solve. Game design is a fun problem to solve. What would make a good challenge? How do I make this
Yeah.
come to life on the table? How do I make this engaging for fun? So it's a community of people who are creative, who are intelligent, who are analytical, who like to make things happen. And I've always felt as a designer myself is having that community of support behind me has really helped me being to where I am today. There have been times where I've had friends in the industry basically putting like their hand on the small of my back, pushing me forward. Go talk
Sure.
to him, go talk to
Right.
her, show them your game. And if I can help pay back so much of the help and support that I've gotten over the years, I am delighted to help create that opportunity for other people going forward.
Well, yeah, fantastic. Amen to that. Where can people find information about you?
About me, so my name's Kathleen Mercury. I have a website actually with all my game design resources that I made over the many years of teaching game design at kathleenmercury.com. They've been translated into different languages. U.S. Army War College apparently has used them, as well as Norway's War College has used some of them.
Ooh.
So I always joke when Norway takes over the world, you're welcome. Um, but I can also be found minimal things on Instagram at Mercury with seven M's. But yeah, but through my website, people can message me if they've got, any questions or anything. I'm always happy to help. I'll be a mentor soon with Unpub and their network. So yeah, as much as I can help out, that's great.
Fantastic. I will have links down below to everything. Game Design Academy, Kathleen's website, everything you need to know. I look forward to getting a chance to see what you're doing this year, and I appreciate you coming on with me today.
Thank you so much. This has been a treat.
Oh, my pleasure.